Good evening. Welcome to the Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's big stories. The House Good Government Committee cites in contempt and orders the arrest of 4 officials of the Office of the Vice President for repeatedly skipping hearings on the OVP's alleged fund misuse.
Vice President Sara Duterte was also a no-show at the hearing, but she did speak up and defend her staff on top of once again criticizing the House hearings and insisting they are politically motivated.
And the 4th typhoon to hit the Philippines in 1 month is battering northern Luzon as we speak. On its tail are 2 more cyclones, one of which is likely to hit the country this week.
Kicking off this Monday with yet another House hearing, and this one ended with the Committee on Good Government citing in contempt 4 officials of the Office of the Vice President who failed to turn up again.
5 others did show up today, but all claimed to have no personal knowledge of how the Vice President spent her confidential funds. Among the expenses in question were line items like food and medical aid that also showed up in the main budget.
Also, before that hearing started, the OVP's chief legal officer caused a bit of drama for refusing to take the oath and eventually had to be escorted out of the hearing. Here's Marian Enriquez with the report.
5 officials from the Office of the Vice President finally attended today's House Committee on Good Government hearing over the agency's confidential fund spending. Among them are OVP Director for Administrative and Financial Services Rosalyn Sanchez and Chief Accountant Julieta Villa del Rey, who have been subpoenaed before. Also in attendance were Chief Administrative Officer Kevin Jerome Tenido and Budget Division OIC Edeline Rabago. However, Attorney Emily Rose Torrentira, OVP Legal Affairs Division Chief, refused to take the oath, just like Vice President Sara Duterte weeks ago.
I am not an invited resource person. Second, that I have only been asked now to explain why there was no receipt for subpoena for the persons who are not present here.
Torrentira was reportedly the one who refused to receive the panel's summons for OVP personnel. Turns out she also doesn't have authorization from the OVP itself to speak to the committee. So the committee had her escorted out of the hearing. As for the remaining attendees, they were grilled about the good governance program of the OVP. Former Vice President Leni Robredo used to run a similar program, but lawmakers pointed out that the difference was VP Sara's used confidential expenses.
Please enlighten us. Bakit po pagdating sa programa, same program, good governance program of Vice President Duterte, biglang nagkaroon ng confidential fund, biglang nagkaroon ng maintenance of safe houses?
But all OVP officials present said they had no personal knowledge on how the confidential expenses were used.
Your Honor, the budget was proposed by the Office of the Vice President, and it would be for different programs, Your Honor. But as to the details, Your Honor, I do not have information on the specific details and items to be spent under the confidential expense.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, wala po akong knowledge doon sa disbursement and utilization ng confidential funds.
House lawmakers also questioned why there was medical and food aid worth around 40 million pesos in the confidential expenses of the OVP, when there were similar line items in the rest of the expense accounting.
Hindi ko lang maintindihan po, bakit kailangan pa utilize ng confidential fund if may existing na kayo na programa for food and medical assistance?
I have no knowledge about that. What I know, Your Honor, is that the confidential funds are intended for a different set of beneficiaries, or it is for a different purpose, Your Honor.
But then the committee also noticed almost 1 million pesos in medical aid that went to just one person, despite them saying there's a 50,000 peso cap in assistance.
The Office of the Vice President submitted. And in one of these tulong na binigay nila in terms of purchase of provision of medical and food aid is in the amount of 1 million pesos. No? So if the theory supposedly was that we are to cap the medical assistance at 50 para mas marami yung matulungan, bakit may isang medical assistance na umabot ng 1 million pesos?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I do not have information on that.
Okay.
According to the OVP officials who attended, it was Special Disbursing Officer Gina Acosta who would know the details of the Confi funds. However, she's currently in the OVP satellite office in Mindanao. Acosta reports directly to VP Sara's Chief of Staff, Zuleika Lopez, who was also subpoenaed but was still a no-show at today's hearing. In a letter submitted to the committee, she said she has to take care of an aunt in the U.S. who was hospitalized and has no other relative or caretaker to look after her. Some congressmen, however, didn't buy this.
Siya lang ba po ba yung pamangkin ng tita niya? Wala na po ba ibang pamangkin? Wala na po ba siyang asawa na padadala? Because we are tackling so much issues about her. And this is a clear evasion, Mr. Chairman. I hope this is true. Because if this is not true, and we will be able to validate.
In the end, the committee agreed to give Lopez one last chance. She was issued another subpoena for next week's hearing. But as for the 4 others, including Acosta, the committee has cited them all in contempt despite their excuses. 3 witnesses said Sunshine Fajardo was the one who provided them monthly cash envelopes, while her husband, Edward, was supposedly the disbursing officer. Meanwhile, Ortonio is one of 2 officials who signed the checks payments linked to the confidential funds.
Medyo nakakapagtaka dahil pare-parehas silang umalis. Pare-parehas silang may travel order. Pare-parehas silang pinahintulutan na umalis sa araw na may hearing tayo. Now, it makes me think that there's actually a malicious intent behind all these reasons and travel orders given to them just so that they can, again, avoid attending today's hearing, Mr. Chair.
For News 5, I'm Marian Enriquez. We are One News.
Well, Vice President Sara Duterte wasn't going to take those allegations sitting down. At a press conference this afternoon, she defended the officials who didn't turn up to today's hearing, saying they were at various satellite offices around the country to prepare for the 89th founding anniversary of the OVP next week.
That is not true. In-explain ko na kanina, no? Walang mali siya yan. Meron kaming OVP anniversary sa November, 89th anniversary sa November 15. Lahat kami, tulad kami ni JC, nandito kami ngayon to discuss OVP anniversary for Panay and Negros Island. So, merong isa pumunta ng Cebu at merong isa, his trip was not for a anniversary. Ang trip niya is to Caraga, preparing for possible typhoon sa December. Kasi usually Mindanao, December yung bagyo sa Mindanao. Experience namin doon. Even nung mayor ako, nakadalawang bagyo ako, December lagi ang Mindanao na bagyo. And then the other 2, yes, Thanksgiving ang kanila, yung isa Bukidnon ng area. So marami sa mga personalidad sa central office nagpunta sa mga satellite offices dahil lahat ng satellite offices meron silang Thanksgiving, iba't ibang activities ng Thanksgiving.
The 4 OVP officials who were cited in contempt today, Ortonio, the husband and wife Fajardo duo, and Acosta, are among the 7 that the DOJ placed under an immigration lookout bulletin order last week. The other 3 are Lopez, the chief of staff who's in the U.S., Villa del Rey, and Sanchez. The vice president also maintains that all of these hearings at the House are politically motivated.
Sa simula pa lang, ma'am, nagsabi na talaga ako na the hearings in the House of Representatives are politically motivated. Unang-una, nagsimula yan last year, di ba? Kung maalala ninyo, nagsimula talaga yan last year sa confidential funds. May meeting na nangyari with the Makabayan Block, and hindi naman tinago yon, pinost naman sa social media, Makabayan Block and Speaker Martin Romualdez. Then they started attacking the budget of the Office of the Vice President. Wala talaga silang evidence of wrongdoing. That is why pinipilit talaga nila na maghanap ng katiwalian, kumbaga, dyan sa mga hearings nila na hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin nila nakukuha. Sinisira lang nila ng sinisira yung institution, yung integrity ng dignity ng institution ng Office of the Vice President, and of course, yung mga pangalan ng mga ordinary employees. Naghahanap kayo ng mali kasi wala kayong makita, naghahanap kayo ng mali para makapaggawa kayo ng impeachment.
Today's press conference by Duterte was not as fiery nor long as her so-called drag me to hell briefing on October 18. But she, like last time, hit House Speaker Martin Romualdez once more. Duterte was also asked about her political plans for 2028.
December 2026 would be the best time to decide kung tatakbo sa 2028. Alam ko si Martin, he really wants to run for president. And if he cannot make it through a popular vote, he'll just do the charter change and run as prime minister.
By now, it's clear that the Vice President has no intention of attending any of the House hearings anymore. And let's hash things out. We have with us tonight House Quad Committee Co-Chairman and Santa Rosa Representative Dan Fernandez. Welcome back to The Big Story.
Yeah, good evening, ladies, and to all the viewers of your show.
Okay, first of all, let's go to the Vice President. Have you talked with VP Sara after her latest press con? Does she really have no intention at all to attend the House hearings? And what do you make of the letter submitted by the Chief of Staff of the Vice President na meron daw medical emergency na puntahan sa US? Ano pong ang detalye po doon?
Well, actually, yung medyo problem, no? Parang nagiging basihan na yun ng mga resource persons natin. Before, it's always like sila mismo yung nako-confine. And this time, nag-employ sila ng panibagong tactic that yung mga kaanak naman nila. And that's the reason why I manifested doon sa hearing that we have to validate yung mga documents that were submitted to us in order to find out if indeed yung excuse was really legal, no? I hope that these are all legal para at least justify yung humanitarian cause that was approved by the committee a while ago. Kasi parang sa akin parang hindi siya acceptable parang feeling ko talagang nag-evade siya considering that she's very close with the Vice President and at the same time sila yung involved doon sa movement of the money that was withdrawn by the Pahardas, and I think their presence in the hearing is so important that they need to evade attending the hearing, so but still pumayag na rin naman ako doon sa decision ng committee na bigyan pa ng another chance to appear in the next hearing.
That's for Zuleika Lopez, the Chief of Staff.
Yes.
Only her.
Only her. Oo, yes. But yung if ever that she will not be attending in the next hearing or yung justification is not validated, I'm pretty sure masasite na rin siya in contempt.
Is it possible to cite the Vice President in contempt or it's not because of parliamentary courtesy?
Well, it's possible, no? But of course, medyo nilet ko na namin yun because she doesn't want to take her oath, no? But in accordance with the rules, she violated the rule of the committee. But in deference to the Vice President, hindi na nga namin po pinursue yun. But of course, it's all depending sa members of the committee. Now we haven't tackled that issue yet.
Congressman, were you satisfied with the answers that you heard today from the staff who did turn up to the hearing? Most of them said they don't have personal knowledge of how the Vice President spent the confidential funds.
Yes, mga organic kasi itong mga tao nandun These are the people that they have done their job, no? And basically yung memo nang galing sa Office of the Vice President mismo ordering them for the release of those money, no? Kaya I think these people are less responsible compare mo to doon sa mga kila Sunshine Paharda, kila Edward Paharda, at yung kay Attorney Lopez nga. And I think one, the SDO from Davao, I forgot the name Gia Acosta. Yeah.
Congressman Fernandez, yun nga yung kinatatakan ko, no? Kasi you have the 5 who did attend, but apparently they're not really familiar, no? In terms of the specific issue of how the confidential funds were allegedly misused. Now, the ones who were in the ILBO or lookout bulletin since last week, yun nga yung mga kakasuhan nyo ng contempt, yung 4 doon, sila yung mas, I think, you're guessing na sila yung mas may alam at makakasagot ng mga tanong nyo. Now, bakit pa natin inimbitahan tong 5 kung yung talagang other 7 naman yung mas hinahanap natin, kumbaga?
Well, these 4 no na nandun, I think there were 4 in there, no. Sila mismo yun ang pumipirma also for the releasing ano nila yun, department nila. But this I think si Acosta, Gia Acosta, or si Paharda, siya mismo yung nagdi-disburse. Siya yung disbursement officer. And basically makikita mo na yung responsibility lies with them as well, being the signatory of all the documents that pass through them. But itong memo na nanggagaling sa Office of the Vice President through Attorney Lopez and kay Acosta, I think it is much more important doon sa hinahanap namin na kanino talaga nanggaling yung utos para i-release mga perang yon. So I believe that the presence of these personalities much more important than these poor that have not attended the hearing. Pero corroborative yun pag binigyan mo ng link between all of those people that we have invited, makikita mo yung link ng kanilang ginawang paglalabas ng pera.
Related to that, Congressman Dan, so hindi kayo satisfied because I believe itong yung mga na-cite in contempt, they did send letters explaining why they were not there. The Vice President also had a press con this afternoon to kind of reiterate what was said in the letters, founding anniversary nga sa November 15, so they're busy. Hindi ba pumasa itong excuse sa inyo? I mean, they are also doing government work. I'm just wondering kung hindi ba sapat yung excuse na yon. Kasi napagbigyan yung may sick aunt sa States, si Zuleika Lopez, na Chief of Staff. Pero yung iba hindi napagbigyan when technically the Vice President has already spoken and she did say that they have been deployed for work.
Alam mo kasi may procedure kami, di ba? We sent invitation, then after the invitation, kapag hindi ka nag-reply, you have to tell us, no? We'll be issuing a show cause order to explain to us, no? But unfortunately, yung mga explanation nila parang vague Kasi you have to consider that this is much more important than the anniversary that they are attending to. And so important to all of us, not only to the President, but to all the people watching, na dapat po bigyan ng attention. Those people that are all connected with this disbursement of this money, instead of trying to send other personalities in their office, I think that's setting a bad example na, di ba, bakit yung taong mismong involved sa ating invitation, yung kanyang pinadadala sa mga okasyon nila, hindi ba pwede muna na ipadala mo muna yung ibang empleyado ng iyong opisina, considering that you have so many employees under your Office of the Vice President? Prudence dictates that if you are under investigation, the least that you can do is try to isolate your people that are involved in this kind of anomalies. And as much as possible, di ba, kami sa PNP, kapag yung people are being accused of, we are putting that in a preventive suspension. And we are housing the different policemen. So anytime that we need them, they can attend the series of investigation or
They can
any
answer the
hearings that
questions.
being conducted by both houses. So sana ganun ang ginawa po ng Office of the Vice President instead of them sending to these different occasions.
Speaking of evading hearings, there's another Duterte who refuses to attend the Quadcom hearings, and that's former President Rodrigo Duterte. Sabi niya, sisipain daw niya kayo. Pero kayo, nag-offer kayo. Sabi niya, wala na siya pamasahe. Nag-offer po kayo to shoulder travel expenses. Has he responded to that? And what do you make of his remarks towards the House?
Well, alam mo naman kasi yung former president, di ba? Laging ganun ang kanyang mga pronouncement and hindi na po tayo nabibigla doon. But of course, the other members of the committee, you cannot blame them on trying to say something against the former president. Especially when I saw yung mga reply ng ating mga young members na di punta rito, paano siya makakapunta rito, paano niya kami masisipa kung hindi siya pupunta dito. Alam mo, medyo yung exchanging of di ba, ng mga bad statements, no? Nagiging parang hindi na nararapat. And I think this will all end, no, if the former president will attend our committee hearing.
But I wanna... Go ahead.
Yes.
I want to get some clarity over your standing in the hearings because nagbitiw kayo temporarily ni co-chair Benny Abante from the Quadcom hearings. Until when is that, and what is your role now that you've declared that you're temporarily stepping back?
I want to clarify something. Nag-inhibit po kami doon sa issue nung kay Grijaldo. Because Grijaldo, Colonel Hector Grijaldo, accused us of coercion and harassment. Hindi po kami nagbibitiw doon sa position namin bilang chairman, but doon po sa issue nung kay Grijaldo. Because we don't want to be involved in the discussion or investigation of that issue because we will be tackling that problem that arises because of that affidavit that was executed by Colonel Grijaldo at the Senate. We wanted to find out the veracity of him accusing us of coercing and harassing, di ba? And as a matter of fact, we are already have sent our different answer to his allegation, and we will be proving to everybody and to the Filipino people that there was indeed no coercion and harassment. And even the time and the moment that we were together with Grijaldo doon po sa loob ng hindi siya isang private room, but yung kwarto pong yon ay nakalaan po para sa mga resource persons, and at the same time makita po natin kung talagang nag-employ po kami ng harassment sa kanya. And doon po kami sa issue yon, and I will be standing as a resource person, and even I will be taking my oath para na sa gano'n magkaroon ng pre-discussion yung mga members natin and the chairman to have a of asking us of what really transpired. Kasi alam mo, mabigat yung kanyang accusation na yun eh. Dahil ang sinasabi niya, tinret namin siya, kinuors namin siya. Ano ba ibig sabihin ng coercion, di ba? Pinilit namin siya. Is he under duress? Tinutukan ba namin siya? Or sinakal ba namin siya? Whatever. So, kailangan i-prove niya yun sa susunod na hearing. And that we have to be inhibited doon po sa hearing para na sa ganun magkaroon po ng transparency.
Maybe he wasn't. There's also nuances to this, Congressman Dan. No, but what if were there a number of you in the room together with him, grilling him, questioning him? Baka naman that's when he felt pressured.
Kasi nag-submit na rin yung two other lawyers. So 5 lang kayo sa kwarto, di ba? Kayo ni Kong Benny, and then si Grijaldo, and then yung dalawang abogado ni Garma. The two attorneys already submitted an affidavit. So that's notarized, right?
Yeah.
Basically, they're saying na yung storya ninyo yung accurate.
Yes, meron
how do we proceed?
The real story about that issue, we make it sure that there were people that will be around when we were talking with Grijaldo. Kasi nga yun ang iniiwasan namin dito na magkakaroon po ng kulay at baka mamaya mabaligtad pa kami. And we ask the presence of the lawyer to be present on on the time that we are asking him about the affidavit of Colonel Garma. And indeed, nangyari nga. Kaya nga thankful kami that we asked the presence of that two lawyers. And they, nag-execute din po sila ng kanilang statement, belying yung sinasabi nung si Colonel Grijaldo. And ang problema, hindi siya umaattend. Ayun, sabi nasa ospital na raw. Is mula pa noong November 6 hanggang ngayon ata nasa ospital pa. So, yun ang nagiging reason ng mga resource person natin talagang nag-evade na po sila kapag napupush na natin sila against the wall. Ang kanilang mga premise is going to the medical facility.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, and we look forward to the next hearing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, House Quad Committee Co-Chair Representative Dan Fernandez. Up next, Typhoon Nika is now barreling across northern Luzon just as another cyclone forms offshore. We'll be bringing you the latest updates from Ilocos Sur live up next. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching a big story here on One News. Let's check in now on Typhoon Nika, international name Toraji. At this hour, it is moving across northern Luzon, threatening areas on its path with moderate to torrential rains. It is expected to exit landmass in several hours through Ilocos Sur, where News 5 correspondent Brian Basa is at the moment. And let's bring him in right now. Brian, where are you exactly, and how is the situation over there?
Hi, Gretchen, ladies. I'm here in Vegan City, capital of Ilocos Sur. Typhoon Nika is still making its to blow. And that's how we know the storm is still in our midst. That's no surprise for the people here, though, kasi alam nilang daraanan ng bagyo ang Ilocos Sur, and that includes Vegan City, and they are expecting that Typhoon Nika will leave the country as soon as possible. Ladies.
Brian, I was looking at your report over in Frontline Pilipinas, and it was completely different weather a while ago. At what time did the rain stop?
Did I hear the word stop? Okay, kasi kanina, great Gretchen that you were watching the report earlier, because sakto when Gigi Manika led me into the story, that was parang 7 p.m. And sakto sa forecast, no? Because of course we have been monitoring the storm. So sakto nung 7 p.m. nung sumalang ako sa ere, sabay na bumuhos talaga yung ulan at saka bumuga yung hangin. And then after 30 minutes, 30 minutes, biglang kumalma na ulit ng konti yung panahon, but then again, alam natin na hindi pa ganung kalayo yung bagyong Nika sa atin because may bumubuga pang hangin, no? You see it in the trees, in the plants, minsan pag sumasayaw yung mga ito. So you know na medyo nagpaparamdam pa rin, pero hindi na kasing lakas ng kanina kasi they're expecting na mabilis ang movement ng bagyo.
So signal number 4, ibig sabihin, malakas ang hangin. Am I correct? And comparing this with Christine, how would you characterize this typhoon as well as the preparedness of our Ilocanos?
Okay. In terms of when we compare it to previous storms, ang dala nito, yung malakas na hangin. Pero yun nga, mabilis kasi yung pagdaan. Yung Typhoon Christine dito, ulan ang dala. No? And we have seen that also in other areas na yun talaga ang kumbaga defining characteristic ng bagyong Christine. So parang mabilis lang siyang dumaan. Ang effect lang nito, though, syempre, dahil karugtong niya yung Typhoon Marce, it hampered operations in some areas kasi if we're talking about power and communication lines, dito sa Vigan okay, but in Ilocos Norte, yun ang medyo may problema dahil may mga natumbang postes, so the electricity provider is working to restore power there. Tapos may mga bumagsak ding puno, so yun ang nag-pose ng safety risk sa mga residente roon. Yun ang minomonitor ng mga tao rito. Dito sa Ilocos Sur, ang ginawa nilang preparation is forced evacuation agad. Kahit kalmado pa ang panahon kaninang umaga, minandate na ni Ilocos Sur Governor Jerry Singson ang evacuation in areas under signal number 4. So may 1,500 residents as of 6 p.m. yan in 12 towns and cities that have sought temporary shelter. So yun ang latest update for now in terms of evacuation data.
It looks like the worst is over and hopefully it stays that way. Thank you so much. And stay dry. Brian Basa of News 5 reporting to us from Vigan, Ilocos Sur.
All right, still on Typhoon Nika, it is forecast to continue traversing mainland Luzon before making its exit from the Philippine area of responsibility by tomorrow, Tuesday. The eye of the cyclone was last seen over the vicinity of Bisao Mountain Province, and it is moving west-northwest at 25 kilometers per hour. At this rate, Nika is forecast to emerge over the sea just west of Ilocos Sur this evening and exit the Philippine area of responsibility tomorrow morning. Eventually, it will weaken to a remnant low as it nears southern China. However, we cannot let our guards down just yet because the tropical depression that Pag-asa was monitoring east of Samar is seen to enter the PAR by tomorrow. It is moving in a northwestward direction and will intensify to a typhoon before nearing the Philippine landmass and possibly traversing northern Luzon once again. But for now, signal number 4 is still up over Kalinga, Mountain Province, as well as the northern portion of Ifugao, central and southern Abra, and the northern and central portions of Ilocos Sur. Signal number 3 is up over the northern portion of Quirino, the northeastern portion of Nueva Vizcaya, the central part of Isabela, the southwestern portion of Cagayan, the southern portions of Apayao and Ilocos Norte, and the northern portion of Benguet. Same goes for the rest of Abra, Ifugao, and Ilocos Sur. The northwestern and eastern portion of Cagayan, as well as the rest of Isabela, Nueva Vizcaya, Quirino, Apayao, Benguet, and Ilocos Norte are all under signal number 2. Along with La Union, the northeastern portion of Pangasinan, the northern and central portions of Aurora, and the northern portion of Nueva Ecija. Meanwhile, it is signal number 1 over the Babuyan Islands, the rest of mainland Cagayan, Pangasinan, Aurora, and Nueva Ecija, Bulacan, Pampanga, Tarlac, the northern and central portions of Zambales, and the northeastern portion of Quezon, including the Polillo Islands. Taking another quick break for now, but right after that, what will the Donald Trump-Bongbong Marcos relationship look like? We will be speaking with former commissioner of the PCGG, the Presidential Commission on Good Government, Attorney Ruben Carranza, live from New York. When the big story returns, stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
The final numbers for the U.S. presidential elections last week is in, cementing Donald Trump's stunning political comeback. So Trump won a total of 312 electoral college votes after Arizona was called over the weekend. The state voted blue in 2020 but flipped back to the Republicans this year. That leaves Vice President Kamala Harris with 226, which, as you can see on the map, is a far cry from the close race the mainstream pollsters had been predicting. Trump also swept all 7 battleground states, not to mention that Republicans also took back control of the Senate. They're also just 4 seats away from taking control of the House of Representatives, which, if they win, would give the Republicans unprecedented full control of the U.S. government. So, what will a Donald Trump Bongbong Marcos relationship look like? For some insights, let me bring in former PCGG Commissioner Attorney Ruben Carranza, who's now a senior associate at the International Center for Transitional Justice in New York City. Good evening from Manila, Attorney Ruben.
Good evening to all of you. It's morning here, but
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Good evening from us. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about is the fun fact that we discovered recently, which is Trump Tower in New York City, the flagship Trump Tower, used to belong to the Marcos family. It used to be called 40 Wall Street, and I know you're intimately familiar with that. Talk us through it.
yeah, 40 Wall Street is still called the Trump Building. It's actually very close to my office in New York. And it was built in 1929, 1930, several stories high, one of the iconic buildings in Manhattan. And it was owned by a New York real estate company for a while. But in 1982, Imelda Marcos was about to celebrate her birthday that year and made a wish to her husband. Her wish was to buy buildings in New York, and it was one of about 4 buildings that the dictator bought for his wife. Trump Tower, 40 Wall Street at that time, was purchased for $71 million by Ferdinand Marcos as a birthday gift to Imelda Marcos in 1982. And over the years, it's been transferred in terms of its ownership and lease, and the present-day lessee is Donald Trump, or the Trump Corporation, although a New York judge found that the corporation and Donald Trump himself and the family committed fraud by claiming a higher value for the building to obtain loans from various banks. And so they were stripped of control over the building and several other properties.
So 1982 is when the Marcos family bought the building. At what point did they lose control of it?
They lost control when the revolution took place, and in 1986, and the PCGG, which was newly created at that time, asked the U.S. government for assistance in enforcing various freeze orders on Marcos properties in the U.S. So this was one of the properties whose ownership and transfer was frozen. It was eventually sold at auction because the Marcoses, through they were represented by dummies actually in owning the building. One of their dummies was Glyceria Tantoco, the family that owns Rustans, actually were used as dummies by Ferdinand Marcos, and they did not pay taxes on the building. So after it was eventually sold on behalf of the Philippine government, less than, I think, about $5 million was taken back, recovered in the sale of this building.
Mr. Carranza, I was just curious. I'm sure you've heard that they've abolished the PCGG. In your opinion, having served there and going after the ill-gotten wealth of the Marcoses, how do you feel about the abolition of the PCGG? Do you think it was the right time for it to be abolished? Has it really exhausted everything that the Commission can do to try to get back the wealth?
I actually haven't heard that, and I'm hearing that for the first time. I don't know whether that's really their intention to get rid of a commission that the Marcoses have also been using to coerce former Marcos cronies and even present Marcos cronies to give back, in quotation marks, what the Marcoses claim as their own. There's an entire list of assets that the Marcoses claim they own, mainly shares of stock in various Philippine companies. The PCGG under Senator Salonga, and even when I was there, called it the IME list after Imee Marcos, because she asked their accountants, including an accountant now in exile in Hong Kong named Rolando Gapud, to make a list of all the assets that the Marcoses claimed were there so that they could force cronies to give it up. So I don't know whether the PCGG is in fact about to be abolished, because I think that the Marcoses have a use of it but certainly not for the intention it was created.
Knowing that this relationship between the Marcoses and the Trumps, what was on your mind when Donald Trump emerged as a clear winner? Do you think that we could leverage on that relationship, knowing how transactional Donald Trump is? Or do you see some obstacles along the way? What would Bongbong Marcos have to do to be able to curry the favor of a Donald Trump?
Well, they will be natural allies because corruption comes to both families naturally. Donald Trump and Imelda Marcos already know each other from Imelda Marcos's various shopping trips to New York, although Donald Trump did not meet with Imelda Marcos or any of the Marcoses during their exile. So that also says something about how Donald Trump sees people. If he has use for them, he will use them. And if he has no use for them, if he doesn't gain anything, if he doesn't scam anyone else with them, then he won't. One of the things that I think are very telling about this is that even some of the Marcos cronies may also have their own way of accessing the incoming second Trump administration through other means. So in the past, they used a realtor, for example, who was the developer for the Trump building there in Manila to be some kind of special envoy to the United States, bypassing the U.S. ambassador. So there will be others within the Marcos circle who will try to get in on the corruption that many of us here in the United States expect will increase in the 4 years ahead.
So it's still going to boil down to personal relationships, is what you're saying. In the second Trump presidency, those personal linkages are going to be very important.
Certainly, and of course, Marcos Jr. is not the only government leader who will use personal relationships in accessing the Trump administration. Well, I saw a statement that Marcos Jr. released when the results came out. He said, there will be a better future in Philippine-American relations under Trump. But what's important is also to look at the very bitter past in that relationship, not just with the Trumps, but with the United States. When you asked about 40 Wall Street, for example, it was acquired for $71 million, when at that time, in 1982, the Philippines' debt was $24 billion already, a huge amount of money, and there was a famine going on in Negros because the sugar cane industry had collapsed, and about, I think, 300,000 children were malnourished. And here's a family that acquires a $71 million building in the middle of all that. So this just shows how insensitive the Marcos family is, and that's exactly the kind of person Donald Trump is. So in some ways, they'll get along, but to the detriment of both Americans and Filipinos.
Well, some analysts say that President Marcos has to sell how strategic the Philippine and U.S. alliance is to Donald Trump and probably take advantage of his strong anti-China sentiment. What do you make of that?
The problem is that Donald Trump is anti-China only when he doesn't profit from any relationship with China. The other problem, of course, is that the economic relationship between the United States and China is in many ways similar to the economic relationship between the Philippines and China. There's a huge dependence in terms of production, in terms of trade. The balance may not be always on the side of the Philippines or on the side of the United States, for that matter. So all these bluffing and threats may not really work out for the United States. I mean, Trump's insistence, for example, on imposing tariffs on imports into the United States, which he's been fixated about, will lead to huge increases in prices for ordinary consumers in the United States. And that relationship will eventually, I think, matter more than the military aspects of that relationship, which in the Philippines may be the more important aspect. The United States, for example, has never recognized the Philippine claim to the South China Sea area, the West Philippine Sea that the Philippines claims, and I don't think that will change under Donald Trump. So the United States, whether it's under Trump or under any other president, will stand for its own interests and not necessarily and not really for Philippine interests.
So can I take that to mean, Mr. Carranza, that you see continuity in terms of that aspect, the TIF in the West Philippine Sea, that the Mutual Defense Treaty, all of that will, go on regardless of who's in the White House?
Well, we saw from the first Trump administration that there is a level of, in a way, randomness, but also just bluster and lack of strategy, really, in Donald Trump's brain. And that brain, again, is driven by greed and avarice and ego more than anything else. And when he claims, for instance, that he's a very good friend of Xi Jinping, he says that as a personal matter, not as a foreign policy matter. So that unpredictability will make a difference, because the Philippines wants predictability in responding to this relationship, this constant confrontations, for example, in the South China Sea with China or with any other claimants. And, between the unpredictability of an authoritarian leader in the United States and this desire for legitimacy by a son of an authoritarian leader in the Philippines, I don't think that these two drivers of their decision making will coincide with the respective interests of their countries.
Attorney Ruben, we've got 30 seconds left on the clock, but I just very quickly wanted to ask you about immigration. Do you think he's going to make good on his promise to crack down on immigration? That's something that's worrying some of the Phil-Am communities there.
Including our ambassador.
He did so in the first Trump administration, a Muslim ban, which really was an immigration or a travel ban. I think that here he'll be more strategic. He will not do it right away. Maybe he will have some symbolic action. But yes, this is one of the things that he feels that he can do right away, and he will try to send a signal right away.
Okay, something to watch out for. We're going to have to leave that there for tonight. Thanks so much for your insights. Former PCGG Commissioner and now Senior Expert at the International Center for Transitional Justice, Attorney Ruben Carranza.
And that's it for the show tonight.